Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing my 13-week update. If you didn't see my 8-week update, I will leave a link down in the description below if you want to check that one out. And what I'm going to be talking about in this video is everything that happened between that 8-week update and today. So I actually think that my symptoms in the second half of the first trimester were actually worse than the first half. I don't know if that's unusual or not. I think they do say that 9 weeks tends to be like the peak in symptoms just because of like hormone levels. But I think for me, I was kind of constantly feeling like I was rounding the corner. Like I would just have a day where I felt good, and then later that night I just crash. Like my energy levels are definitely not super consistent still. But I do, instead of just kind of feeling tired all the time, I kind of have, not bursts of energy, but I kind of have areas of like almost normal energy, and then kind of like little dips in that where like I just want to curl up on the couch and just stare off into space. I feel like I've had more difficulty sleeping, and it's not even, it's hard to pinpoint exactly why. I think part of the reason is just like waking up in the middle of the night to pee, and then that just kind of like sets me off. So like I guess I just have a hard time falling back to sleep after waking up, rather than a hard time falling asleep at all. Because typically what tends to happen is I'll wake up because I have to pee, I'll go pee, and then I'll be like, oh, I'm a little bit thirsty, and I'll get some water, and I'll be, trying to go back to sleep, and then I'll be like, oh wait, no, I'm kind of a little bit hungry, so I'll get a snack. And I mean, it probably takes me about an hour in between when I wake up and when I fall back asleep, and then I'll sleep for like another 4 to 5 hours. So I definitely feel like I'm getting 8 hours of sleep a night. It's just not like one consistent stretch. I feel like in weeks 8 through maybe 11 or 12, I was kind of in that, like, I guess like food aversion stage where, like, I feel like food aversion isn't even the right word to call it, but I feel like I haven't heard a term that does describe it completely. It's like, I would just say like a general food aversion. Like sometimes just nothing sounded good. Or maybe just like one thing sounded good. So I feel like it was definitely hard. It's hard to deal with. I feel like now it's starting to get a little better where there's a bigger variety of foods that sound good to me, but it's still kind of like certain times of day where I'll kind of just be like, I need carbs or something like that. In terms of specific food aversions, I really hate the smell of onions, particularly red onions, which is so strange because I typically love onions. And I also don't like the smell of like oily things. I've been really liking fruit, like mandarin oranges, grapefruits, frozen grapes, and also just like really, really cold water, which is unusual for me. I feel like it's usual for most people. But I was the kind of person who just drank room temperature water all the time, and like that was just normal for me. And now I feel like my water has to be cold or else it just like doesn't taste right to me. And I've also really been liking Spindrift because sometimes it's like regular water almost feels like filling to me, if that makes sense. Like it just kind of like the way it sits in my stomach. So having like the carbonated water is like a little bit easier for me to like get more fluids into my system. I've had a lot of really random cravings. I'd say the vast majority of my cravings I have not partaken in because for some reason, and I feel like it's just my body being like, like I've had a lot of cravings for things that I like either you're not supposed to be eating when you're pregnant, or just like personally I think it's just not a good idea to eat them while pregnant. So like I'm trying to think of examples, like blue cheese, brie cheese, corn dogs, hot dogs, just like things that I never really like was that into before, that I'm like, that sounds wonderful. I've been really craving like a nice piece of like sub bread, like the bread they have at Jimmy John's or something like that, or just a sandwich in general, really. But like, I'm like, I can't have a sandwich even if I made my own sandwich, because like, what on earth am I gonna put in it? Like, if you're not really supposed to have like cold lunch meat when you're pregnant, I'm like not gonna heat up like lunch meat, because I feel like it's just weird. I've also been really craving just kind of like different Asian soups lately, which is really random. But like tom yum soup, or wonton soup, or even just like a bowl of ramen literally sounds amazing. So the craving I had for tom yum soup, that was actually a really bad craving. And I was like really considering like ordering some to be delivered. But I actually read that you're not supposed to have lemongrass when you're pregnant, I think. And they do have lemongrass in that soup. So I was just kind of like, oh, it's probably not the best idea. So I didn't end up eating any of it. And then when it comes to like wonton soup or ramen, I'm just kind of thinking that's probably just a little bit too much sodium. Kind of a random symptom I've had is excess saliva. I feel like there were definitely a couple times between weeks like 8 through 11 maybe, where I would be like talking or eating and all of a sudden I would just like drool. I've definitely been feeling like my body temperature is running hotter than usual. Like typically I'm the kind of person who's always cold, and I almost feel like I've turned into the kind of person who's always hot. So I don't know if I talked about this at all in my last update, but there was one night where I was just like angrily like, we need to buy a fan, because like I just needed air on my body. So like we've had to turn our AC down, we've had to like, yeah, we bought a fan and we got out another fan that we have. So like pretty much not like consistently, but I feel like I'll just kind of like get hot all of a sudden and just like need to turn on a fan and just like get some air on me. I also feel like I've been super gassy. I feel like there's times where like my stomach almost like hurts, and then I'm like, just gas. I've also had like some random like aches and pains. So I feel like sometimes I'll kind of feel like just like random places in my stomach where it feels just kind of like a little bit like sore or tight. It's probably just like my uterus growing or stretching or whatever. And then also just like in my back and in my hips, like sometimes if I sit for a little bit too long and I stand up, I'll just kind of feel like my back is out of whack. Or sometimes when I wake up in the morning just from like sleeping on my left side all night, I'll kind of feel like my hip is a little bit sore. But definitely nothing too bad. I think in my last update I talked about how if I get hungry then I start to feel nauseous, and that has definitely still stuck with me. And for some reason I almost feel like it's worse. Like I feel like maybe it's just because I've been like hungrier, like maybe my appetite has increased a little bit, but it's almost like now, instead of just like feeling like kind of like off a little bit if I get hungry, like I just like feel like gaggy if I get hungry. I think between the fact that I've been trying to eat as healthy as I can and the fact that I've had kind of like general food aversions from time to time, I have not actually gained any weight. I might have even lost a pound or two since my last update. And I definitely think that I was like a lot more bloated around week 8 than I am right now. So I almost feel like my stomach looks smaller sometimes. But like if I like have a big meal or something, then I feel like it kind of grows. I've bought a couple maternity pieces. I got some maternity leggings and a couple maternity like sleeveless shirts. And then I haven't actually started wearing them yet. But I just kind of figured I don't want to be in a situation where like I need to, you know, go to an appointment or something and nothing fits all of a sudden. So I just kind of wanted to like have them on standby. I feel like some of my clothes are starting to get a tiny bit uncomfortable. I feel like I just kind of tend to dress comfy anyways, just because, you know, with the pandemic, we're not going anywhere. So I've just been kind of gravitating towards wearing a lot of dresses or like high-waisted skirts, these kind of things that don't sit like right on my like waistband area, because I feel like that in particular is kind of where I started to feel the tightness. I definitely think that my boobs have gotten a little bit bigger, but I haven't actually outgrown my bras yet, so I'm holding off on getting any new bras because I feel like that is always a bit of an investment. And I feel like they're still a little bit tender, but not as much as they were in the first 8 weeks. Around 10 weeks, I had my very first prenatal appointment, and that was definitely exciting. We just kind of went over like routine stuff, just like my medical background, family history, symptoms I've had this pregnancy, and then she checked my weight, my blood pressure, she checked my legs, my feet for swelling, she like checked my pee for 7 different things. What else? She said my uterus was just starting to peek out over the top of my pubic bone. And then we also got to hear the baby's heartbeat for the first time on the little Doppler. And that was literally just like the biggest relief in the world. I honestly I have almost no recollection of what the actual heartbeat sounded like, unfortunately, because, you know, from the moment she was like, oh, that's the baby's heartbeat, like literally my mind just like went blank. I was just so happy. Like I didn't even have the ability to like process what my ears were hearing because I was just processing like the feelings of relief. I was dealing with spotting pretty consistently up until probably around week 11 or so. And then I had like a good couple days with like really little to no spotting at all, and that was really great. So I had that period with like no spotting, and then I had a period where I started having discharge, and I wasn't even sure it was discharge at first because it would be like all of a sudden my underwear would just be like wet. So I was kind of freaked out at first because it was happening pretty often, kind of like throughout the day. So I was like, you know, is this pee? Is this just like discharge? Is this like amniotic fluid? So that made me a little bit nervous. And of course I was like Googling, and, you know, just like based on like the specifics of it, I started to think like, oh, it's probably just like normal discharge. Like, I think around week 11 or 12-ish, they actually do say like expect like increased discharge, and it's just kind of like your body kind of like cleaning you out. And then after a couple days of that, I went in. So after a couple days of that, I actually did start spotting again, but it was kind of like all of a sudden that it happened. So it was like one night I went to the bathroom, and then there was just like a couple drips of blood, and I was like, oh, that's kind of unusual. So I like put on like a little panty liner, and there was just kind of like it was almost like a light bleed. So I like changed my panty liner again, like maybe like 30 minutes later or so, just because I wanted to kind of keep that area really clean. And then within like 5 minutes, I had almost soaked through the entire panty liner because I just like, I guess it was like a sudden gush of blood or something. So at that point I got a little freaked out, and I really thought like I might be having a miscarriage. The weird thing is, after that like gush of blood, it just stopped and it went back to like regular spotting. So I was kind of like, okay, I'm not still bleeding, so I'm probably okay. Like the duration of the bleeding was very, very short. So I was not as worried, but in the back of my head, I was just kind of like, oh, I don't know. So I ended up reaching out to my midwife, and she was literally the sweetest person. So she had me come in the next day, and she checked on me and the baby and stuff, and everything was still good with the baby. Thank God. I got to hear the heartbeat again, and this time I actually like heard the heartbeat. I wasn't just like in a state of, you know, blissful relief. So that was actually really nice. I'm glad that I got a chance to like really hear it. But so she tested my pee because I told her about the like discharge that I've been having. And she didn't really seem too concerned about it, but she was like, oh, like let's test you like just in case. And it turns out I actually had a yeast infection. I don't think that the discharge I was having was related to the yeast infection, because it wasn't like that kind of like clumpy cottage cheese discharge they talk about. With yeast infection, it was just like I was thinking it was like either pee or amniotic fluid. Like that was like the consistency of it. So, I mean, I'm just glad that I went in and she tested me, because that would be got it. Unfortunately, she says that I need to cut back on like processed carbs and sugars, even sugars from fruit. So that was, what was that? Yeah, it was at 12 weeks where I went in for the appointment. And then just yesterday actually is when I got my results back. So definitely need to like do a little bit of research and just kind of reconfigure my diet a little bit. You know, I've definitely got to cut back on some things and find some like alternative sources, I guess you could say. I mean, some things are kind of easy, like switching from like a sweetened Greek yogurt to an unsweetened Greek yogurt, but some things are a little bit more complicated. Like I feel like if I get hungry before bed, that's kind of a time often where like nothing sounds good except for like one thing. And I've really been liking eating those like frozen French toast sticks, which I know is like so bad. Honestly, I think other than the spotting, the hardest thing for me to handle in this pregnancy has been like my diet. Like I just feel so frustrated all the time, because it's like I just really want to do the best that I can, like for myself and for the baby, to be eating really healthy. The issue is that I just, before getting pregnant, I don't think I ate super healthy. Like especially if you go back maybe like a year or two ago, like I definitely did not eat very healthy at all. We probably ate out once or twice a week. Like, you know, even during the week we didn't eat super healthy. Like I've definitely slowly made improvements to my diet. You know, it's not like it's all at once, but it's definitely hard for me, because although I was at a place where I cut out like a lot of restaurant, I mean, we really rarely ever have any sort of like restaurant like delivery or takeout or whatever. I've cut out like pretty much the vast majority of like junk food. Like I'm not having like, you know, ice cream or pizza or whatever. I think it's just, I just always feel like it's not enough. Like I'm just not doing enough. It's like, you know, even before me just like eating fruit was like, go me for eating fruit, because I really didn't before. And now it's like, oh, you need to cut back on fruit because it's got, you know, too much sugar. But it's like, I don't know. I'm just really struggling to find healthy foods that I enjoy eating, because right now I just always feel like I'm either eating something that just isn't the best option, or I'm eating something that I just don't enjoy. Which is sad for me because I feel like I'm kind of a foodie. Like I really love a good meal, you know? So it's been hard. It's been hard. But, you know, I'm doing okay. I did talk to my midwife again at that 12-week appointment about how I still haven't gained any weight whatsoever. And she wasn't concerned at all. She was like, it's very normal for women to not gain any weight during the first trimester and even to lose a little bit of weight. So she was not concerned at all. She was like, you know, your body will make up for it as you get further along. Like, you know, by the middle of the second trimester or the end of the second trimester, I could like gain 4 pounds in 1 week or something. Like, it'll all just kind of even out. Okay, now I'm gonna look at my little apps and tell you exactly how big the baby is and all that. So today at 13 weeks, the baby is the size of a lemon, about 2.9 inches long, 0.8 ounces. My other app says it's the size of a jalapeno. And so the two apps I use are the Bump and Ovia. I really like using them both because they just have different information. But here on Ovia, it shows this gray outline is the size of the baby's hand at birth, and the green is the baby's hand this week. Personally, I don't feel like it's noticeably bigger than at week 12, but I honestly think it's just because I look at it probably almost every day. I don't know why, I just think at the stage where I can't feel the baby yet, it's just kind of a way for me to feel connected to it. I'll typically show it to Kevin on the day that I turn over a new week, so he only looks at it like once a week and he says that he can see a difference, so that's cool. Alright, last thing I'm going to do is measure my stomach and show you my little bump or lack thereof. Okay, so here's my 13-week bump. I feel like it's definitely kind of at the point where if you didn't know I was pregnant, you might just think I was a little pudgy. Personally, I feel a little bit like rounder up here, but I don't think it's actually noticeable. I'm curious to see whether I'm actually smaller than I was last week or if it's my imagination. I am 37 inches. So if I remember, I'll like put up on the screen what it was last week. Or not last week. At 8 weeks. Last video. I've got my next appointment around 15 weeks, so I'll probably update you sometime after that, around maybe 16 weeks. Comment below if you have any questions, or if you are pregnant, let me know how far along you are and how you're feeling. I hope you guys liked this video. Make sure to like it if you did. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys.